The Crescent Hollow Cemetery held secrets deeper than the earth beneath its ancient stones. Sonia stood behind a moss-covered mausoleum, 30 feet from the twin marble graves, close enough to see but far enough to remain invisible. 7 days since they had crossed back into vampire territory, and this was the first time either twin had worked up the courage to witness the ritual. Her hand found Tanya's in the darkness between them, fingers interlocking with the desperate grip of someone afraid to drown. Neither girl breathed unnecessary for their kind, but old human habits clung to them after 12 years among mortals, all their attention fixed on the figure in the long charcoal coat, kneeling between 2 headstones as twilight bled into the perpetual dusk that shrouded the Eastern Territories. Dmitry Rusevori, vampire king of the Eastern Territories. Their father. He looked older than the portraits they had found in forbidden archives during their research, silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples, stark against black, premature aging that should have been impossible for an immortal who had lived 3 centuries. His shoulders curved forward as he placed white night-blooming jasmine on each grave, the only flowers that could survive in perpetual shadow, the traditional funeral offering for vampire royalty. Sonia recognized them from fragments of memory that felt more like fever dreams than reality. He was crying. Not hiding it, not trying to stop the tears that fell onto expensive black fabric while 6 guards in crimson uniforms stood at respectful distances. The Crimson Six, his personal protection. The kind of security that came with ruling a vampire kingdom on the edge of civil war. Sonia pressed her back against the cold stone of the mausoleum, her chest tightening even though she no longer needed air. She watched him touch the first headstone, the one with Tanya's name carved in ancient script. Tanya Dmitrievna Rusevori, beloved daughter, stolen by flame and darkness. Then the second grave, identical in every way except the name. Sonia Dmitrievna Rusevori, beloved daughter, forever mourned. They were supposed to be dead. Had been dead for 12 years, according to every vampire record, every witness account, every blood oath sworn in the aftermath of the massacre. The blood ritual that never actually happened. The bodies that were never actually burned because those bodies had been living in hiding across the human world, while everyone searched Crescent Hollow for ashes that did not exist. Their mother had orchestrated everything. Irina Rusevori, who spent 12 years telling Sonia and Tanya that the man now kneeling in grief was a monster, bloodthirsty, power-hungry, someone who would drain them of every drop if they returned, a tyrant who valued his throne over his children. But tyrants did not cry like that. Tyrants did not visit graves every single twilight for 12 years. Sonia had been watching for 7 days now, and Dmitri came every evening at exactly the same hour, regardless of weather or court obligations. He spoke to the graves in Old Slavic, the ancient language of their bloodline. Sonia could not hear the words from this distance, but she saw his lips moving, saw him trace pale fingers over the engraved names, saw him stay long past when even the guards shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing their king would return to the castle. The memory struck Sonia without warning. Being 5 years old, barely past her turning ceremony, her mother grabbing both twins from the royal nursery with wild eyes and frantic energy. "We are going on an adventure," Irina had whispered, pulling them close. "Do not tell anyone. It is a surprise for your father." Sonia had believed her. Had grabbed her favorite stuffed rabbit and followed without question. Had not understood when they climbed into a spelled carriage that headed straight for the border without stopping. Had not known that she would not see her father again for over a decade. The staged massacre came 3 nights later. Irina had helped rogue vampires from a rival clan, mercenaries who owed no loyalty to the crown. They created a scene of carnage using stolen blood and ash, making it appear that the young princesses had been consumed in a ritual sacrifice gone catastrophically wrong. The twins, barely 5 years old and newly turned into their vampire nature, were smuggled across the border in spelled coffins that masked their life signatures from all blood-tracking magic. The human world became their prison. Prague first, then Berlin, eventually settling in the outskirts of Budapest. Irina worked night jobs that kept them moving, cleaning offices and tending bar and establishments that did not ask questions. The twins attended human schools under false names, learning to suppress their vampire nature so completely that Sonia sometimes forgot what she truly was. They moved every year, sometimes more often, whenever Irina sensed danger that existed only in her paranoid mind. Irina never explained why they ran. She just repeated, like a prayer or a curse, that Dmitri was dangerous, that he would bleed them dry if they went back, that this half-life was better than the alternative, that power corrupted even fathers, that loving a king meant becoming a pawn. Sonia had believed her. Tanya had believed her. What else could children do? Then came the corruption. The price all vampires paid for extended use of concealment magic without proper feeding. It manifested as a spreading darkness beneath Irina's skin, black veins that crawled up her arms and neck like poisonous vines. Even vampires could succumb to magical rot when they pushed their bodies beyond natural limits. Irina refused to return to vampire territory for treatment, too afraid Dmitri would sense her presence, would finally discover the truth. She tried human remedies that could not touch supernatural disease, herbs and prayers, neither of which could stop the corruption from consuming her from the inside out. In the final weeks, delirious with pain in a charity hospice in Prague, Irina confessed everything. "I lied about him," she whispered, voice barely carrying over the hum of machines that monitored vitals she no longer possessed. The twins sat on either side of her bed, Sonia on the left as always, Tanya on the right, hands clasped together across their mother's failing body. "Your father never hurt me. Never threatened you. I left because I was losing. The council was going to rule in his favor in the custody dispute. His royal blood, his power, his centuries of experience, I could not compete. So I did not compete. I took you instead." Sonia made herself think through the hunger. It had been 3 days since their last feeding rat blood purchased from a black market supplier in the border towns. Metallic and thin, barely enough to quiet the constant ache in her veins. Beside her, Tanya shifted weight from foot to foot, a nervous habit their mother had never managed to break. The movement sent a whisper of sound across the cemetery grass, and both twins froze. Dmitri's head turned slightly, as if catching something on the wind. The Crimson Six tensed, hands moving toward weapons that glinted silver in the eternal dusk. For 3 heartbeats that felt like centuries, Sonia was certain they had been discovered. Her glamour felt paper-thin, stretched across features that wanted to revert to their true form. 12 years of suppression had not erased what they were, it had only buried it, and burial was not the same as death. But Dmitri turned back to the graves, and the moment passed. The guards relaxed. Sonia released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "He almost sensed us," Tanya whispered, barely audible even with vampire hearing. Her platinum hair was currently spelled dark brown, a glamour that required constant concentration and made Sonia's head pound. "Our blood is calling to his. Then we need to feed properly before we try anything else," Sonia murmured back. "We are too weak. If the glamour fails..." "I know." Tanya's voice carried an edge that had not existed before their mother's death. Anger had always been her sister's armor, but lately it had grown sharper, more desperate. "But where? We have maybe 200 euros left. That buys us 3 more days of rat blood if we are lucky." The mathematics of survival. It was all they had known for 12 years. How far could they stretch the money? Which human district had the fewest vampire patrols? How much blood could they take from animals before those animals died and drew attention? Their mother had kept them on the edge of starvation, with the efficiency of a warden managing prisoners. "To keep you safe," Irina had said. "To keep you from becoming like him." Sonia watched Dmitri stand, his movements carrying the weight of centuries and grief. He was tall, she realized. Taller than the portrait suggested. The images had flattened him into 2 dimensions. But here in the flesh, he was solid, real, devastatingly present. He touched each headstone once more, left hand for Tanya's grave, right hand for Sonia's, and spoke words that were lost to distance but clear in their meaning. "I love you. I miss you. I failed you." The Crimson Six fell into formation around him as he walked toward the black carriage that waited at the cemetery gates. It was not a car, Sonia noted with surprise. Vampire nobility still used the old ways, spelled carriages drawn by horses that did not need to eat or sleep. A display of power and tradition, the kind of thing a tyrant would do, she thought, then immediately questioned the thought. Was it tyranny to honor tradition? Or was that just another of their mother's lies? "He is leaving," Tanya said, already moving. "We should..." "Wait." Sonia grabbed her sister's arm, holding her back. "Let them clear completely. The guards will do a final sweep." They watched in silence as the Crimson Six performed their duties with military precision. 2 guards walked the perimeter of the cemetery. 1 checked the mausoleums. 3 maintained positions around Dmitri's carriage. Only when the carriage had disappeared into the Gothic sprawl of Crescent Hollow's inner city did the cemetery fall truly silent. "Now," Sonia said. They emerged from behind the mausoleum like ghosts materializing from stone. The walk to the graves felt longer than it should have. Each step weighted with 12 years of questions and lies and hunger. Sonia's legs trembled partly from malnutrition, partly from the surreal horror of approaching her own grave. The headstones were identical. Perfect mirrors. Sonia Dmitrievna Rusevori on the left, Tanya Dmitrievna Rusevori on the right. The patronymic names marked them as his daughters of Dmitri. The inscriptions were carved in both Old Slavic and modern script, as if Dmitri could not decide which language adequately expressed his grief. Beloved daughters, stolen too soon, forever mourned. The dates were accurate. Born in winter 17 years ago, supposedly died in fire 12 years later. White jasmine covered both graves in careful arrangement. Fresh, perfect, placed with a precision that suggested ritual rather than casual remembrance. The flowers would die and be replaced tomorrow, and tomorrow after that, and tomorrow after that. 12 years of jasmine, 12 years of twilight vigils, 12 years of a father mourning children who had never stopped breathing. Tanya knelt in front of her own grave and touched the carved letters of her name. Her fingers trembled. "This is so messed up," she said, and her voice broke on the last word. "We are standing at our own funerals. We have death dates. How do we even—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Sonia knelt beside her sister's grave beside Tanya, who was alive and warm and shaking, with either rage or grief or both. "He comes here every day," Sonia said quietly. The observation felt important somehow. Every single day for 12 years, rain or shine or blood moon. That is not the behavior of someone who did not care. "Or it is guilt," Tanya countered, but the argument sounded hollow even to her. Maybe he drove Mom to do this. Maybe he was exactly what she said, and this, she gestured at the graves, the flowers, the evidence of sustained mourning. This is just performance. For the court, for appearances. Monsters do not cry like that. Sonia touched her own headstone, felt the cold marble that marked a death that had never occurred. Not for 12 years straight. Not when no one is watching. They sat in silence. Two ghost girls haunting their own graves, until the eternal twilight deepened toward true dark. Finally, Tanya stood and pulled Sonia up with her. "So what now? We have seen him. We know he grieves. But that does not tell us who he is. Not really." Sonia looked toward the distant lights of the castle that dominated Crescent Hollow's skyline. Obsidian towers and blood-red banners. The seat of power for the Eastern Territories. Their birthright, their prison, their unknown future. "We go back," Sonia said. "To the court. We use the Volkov papers and get positions as attendants. Low visibility, high access. We watch him where he lives, not just where he mourns. We find out who Dmitri Rusevori really is before we decide anything." "And if he is the monster Mom said?" Tanya asked. Sonia met her sister's eyes ice blue, identical to her own, identical to their father's. "Then we leave, forever, and we find a way to survive in the human world until we fade into ghouls or until someone merciful ends us." "And if he is not?" The question hung between them like the jasmine-scented air, heavy and impossible. Sonia did not have an answer. She was not sure an answer existed. "Then we figure out how to tell a father that his daughters came back from the dead," Sonia finally said. "And we hope it does not destroy him." The hospital room in Prague smelled of decay and desperation. Irina had insisted on a private room in a facility that catered to the supernatural, one of the rare establishments where vampires could receive treatment without human authorities asking uncomfortable questions. The walls were spelled against detection, blood wards glowing faintly in patterns only vampire eyes could perceive. But all the magic in the world could not stop what was happening to their mother's body. The corruption had spread like black lightning beneath her skin. What had started as thin veins along her wrists now covered her arms. Her neck crawled across her collarbones toward her heart. Magical rot, the price paid by vampires who used concealment spells and blood magic beyond their natural capacity for too long. Morphine did not work on their kind vampire metabolism burned through human drugs in seconds, so the healers used blood sage and shadow root instead. Old remedies that dulled pain at the cost of lucidity. Sonia sat on the left side of the bed, Tanya on the right, their hands clasped together across their mother's failing form. It had always been this way, left and right, Sonia and Tanya, two halves of a whole that Irina had tried to keep together, even as she slowly killed them all. "I lied about him," Irina whispered suddenly, her voice cutting through the hum of monitoring equipment that tracked vitals she no longer possessed. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring at something neither twin could see. "Your father. I lied about everything." Sonia's grip on Tanya's hand tightened. "Mom, you need to rest." "No." Irina's hand shot out with surprising strength, catching Sonia's wrist. Her fingers were ice cold, the touch of something already half dead. You need to know, before I cannot tell you anymore. You need to know what I did. Tanya leaned forward, her anger always closer to the surface than Sonia's fear. What you did? You mean besides kidnapping us? Besides making us watch you die because you were too paranoid to go home? I made him think you burned. The words came out in a rush, as if Irina had been holding them inside for 12 years, and they were finally forcing their way out. The ritual massacre, I staged it. Hired rogue vampires from the Nightborn clan. We used stolen blood, ash, enough evidence to convince everyone that you died in a failed sacrifice. That I died trying to save you. The room tilted. Sonia felt it physically, as if gravity had shifted direction. You faked our deaths. The custody battle. Irina continued, her voice strengthening with confession. The council was ruling in his favor. His royal blood, his 3 centuries of experience, his power I could not compete. He was going to get you, take you from me. So I took you first. She coughed, and blood flecked her lips, darker than it should be, corrupted. I made him think you suffered, that you burned alive. Vampires are nearly impossible to kill, but fire and blood magic can destroy even us. I made sure he would believe it, made sure his guilt would stop him from ever questioning, ever looking. Why? The word came out of Sonia like a wound opening. Why would you do that to him? To us? Irina's eyes finally focused, finding her daughter's faces. Because I wanted him to suffer the way I was suffering. Because losing a custody battle to him meant I was nothing. Not a queen anymore. Not a wife. Soon to be not even a mother. I wanted to be everything to you. Your only parent. Your savior. The one who kept you safe from the monster. Tanya jerked her hand away from Sonia's, standing so abruptly the chair scraped against the floor. You starved us. Her voice shook with barely controlled rage. You kept us from what we are. Fed us animal blood like we were pets. Made us afraid of our own nature. You told us human blood would corrupt us. Turn us into monsters like him. But it was you. You were killing us slowly. I was afraid, Irina admitted, and something in her voice broke. Afraid that if you fed properly, you would grow strong. That his blood would call to yours the way it was meant to. That you would remember what it felt like to be princesses instead of refugees. That you would choose him. She coughed again, harder this time. And you would have been right too, because he never hurt me. Never threatened you. He was consumed by ruling vampire politics are brutal, blood-soaked, endless. But with you, he was gentle, devoted, present despite all his responsibilities. Sonia felt something crack inside her chest. 12 years of carefully constructed beliefs, shattering like glass. He loved us. He loved you more than anything in this world or the next, Irina said. That was what I could not stand. That he could be a king and a father. That he could balance power and love. And I was just not enough. Not for him. Not for the council. Not for myself. Tanya had moved to the window, staring out at Prague's twilight skyline with her arms wrapped around herself. So you destroyed his life. And ours. Because you felt inadequate. Yes. The admission came easily now, as if confession had opened a floodgate. And I told myself for 12 years that I was protecting you, that I was the hero of this story. But dying clarifies everything, Malishki. And what it clarifies is that I was the danger, not him, me. Irina reached under her pillow with trembling fingers and pulled out a sealed envelope. Emergency money, 2,000 euros. Documents proving connection to the Volkov clan, distant cousins who owe blood debts to multiple royal houses. Instructions for crossing back into vampire territory. She pressed the envelope into Sonia's hands. You should know who your father really is. Not the man I painted, the man he actually was. Why tell us now? Sonia asked, though she already knew the answer. Because you deserve to know that being his daughter was never the danger I claimed, Irina whispered. The danger was always me. She died 2 nights later, the corruption finally reaching her heart. The twins performed the cremation themselves in a facility that handled supernatural remains without questions. No ceremony, no witnesses. Just 2 17-year-old girls burning their mother's body and collecting her ashes in a ceramic urn that cost more than they could afford. They sat with the ashes in their cheap hotel room for 3 days, neither speaking, both processing grief that had no clear shape. Finally, Tanya broke the silence. I am angry at her, she said, staring at the urn. I am sad. I miss her. I hate what she did. All of it at the same time. She destroyed his life, Sonia replied. And ours. But she also kept us alive, in her own twisted way. Fed us just enough to survive, taught us to hide, made us strong through deprivation, even if it was killing us. So, what do we do? Sonia picked up the envelope, felt the weight of money and false papers and one final gift from a mother who had been both savior and jailer. We go back. We see for ourselves. We find out who Dmitry Rusevori really is. The crossing took 2 weeks to arrange. The Volkov clan proved surprisingly helpful once they verified the blood debt markers Irina had left. They were minor nobility, borderland territory, maintaining power through strategic debts owed to all the major houses. They arranged false identities with bureaucratic efficiency. Svetlana and Tatiana Volkov, distant cousins seeking positions at the royal court. The actual border crossing was terrifying. Guards with blood-scrying equipment that pinged vampire signatures. Questions about their weak state, their obvious malnutrition. But Volkov papers carried weight, and the guards eventually waved them through into the eternal twilight of the eastern territories. Crescent Hollow rose before them like something from a Gothic nightmare made real. Obsidian towers and blood-red banners. Architecture that predated human civilization. A city trapped in perpetual dusk where vampires had ruled for millennia. They were assigned quarters in the attendants' wing servants who maintained the castle, served at blood feasts, performed the invisible labor that kept nobility comfortable. Low visibility, high access, exactly what they needed. That first night, unable to sleep, they slipped out to the cemetery. And for the first time in 12 years, Sonia and Tanya Rusevori watched their father grieve at graves that should have been empty. The castle work began before dawn, if dawn existed in a place trapped in eternal twilight. Sonia and Tanya learned the rhythms quickly, because survival had always meant learning fast. Set the tables for blood feasts, with crystal goblets positioned exactly 3 finger widths from the plate edge. Arrange ceremonial daggers in ascending order of age and power. Polish obsidian surfaces until they reflected like dark mirrors. Never speak unless spoken to. Never meet the eyes of nobility. Become invisible. Court culture was brutal in ways their mother had never described. Vampire hierarchy was everything. Age, bloodline, kill count, political alliances, all factored into an elaborate social calculus that determined who stood where, who spoke when, who lived or died based on a misplaced word. Weakness was exploited with surgical precision. Gossip was weaponized. The twins kept their heads down and observed, cataloging dangers the way soldiers mapped minefields. Nadia Kozlov noticed them on the 3rd day. She appeared in the servants' corridor while Sonia was carrying fresh blood wine to the council chambers. Her presence announced by the sudden silence that fell over other attendants. She looked perhaps 40 in human years. Dark hair pulled back severely, eyes that had witnessed centuries compressed into a gaze that missed nothing. The twins would later learn she was actually 600 years old. Dmitry's chief advisor and the most powerful blood mage in the Eastern Territories. "You are new," Nadia said, and it was not a question. "Yes, my lady." Sonia kept her eyes lowered, her glamour locked tight. "Svetlana Volkov. My sister Tatiana and I arrived 2 weeks ago." "Volkov." Nadia repeated the name like she was tasting it for poison. "Border clan. Minor nobility." She circled Sonia slowly, and the air around her shimmered with barely contained power. "You are too thin. Both of you. When did you last feed properly?" Travel was difficult, my lady. Travel does not cause the kind of malnourishment I can smell on you." Nadia's eyes narrowed. "But we will discuss that another time. The council is waiting for their wine." She walked away, but Sonia felt the weight of her attention like a physical touch. They had been noticed, catalogued, marked for future investigation. The invisibility they desperately needed was already fracturing. That evening, the twins attended their first blood feast. It was held in the throne room, a cathedral of black obsidian carved from a single mountain stone, walls covered in glowing blood wards that pulsed with ancient power. Dmitry presided from a throne that looked less like furniture and more like a declaration of dominance. He wore black and silver, formal regalia that made him appear even taller, more remote. Council members sat at a table that curved around him in a horseshoe, and willing blood donors stood at attention along the walls, humans who had sworn service in exchange for protection and the euphoric high that came from vampire feeding. The twins served in silence, refilling goblets and removing plates with practiced efficiency. But Sonia could not stop watching Dmitry. He was commanding here in a way he had never been at the cemetery. Every word carried the weight of centuries. Every gesture was deliberate, controlled. He spoke in Old Slavic during the political discussions, his voice flowing through the ancient language with native fluency. Blood oaths were sworn and sealed with ritual blade cuts, magic binding the agreements into something more permanent than words. Yet when he thought no one was watching between courses, during a lull in conversation, his eyes drifted to the portraits that lined the throne room walls. There were dozens of them, spanning centuries of Rusevori rule, but his gaze always returned to two specific paintings. Young girls with platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes, captured in blood pigment that made them seem almost alive. He cannot even enjoy a feast without thinking about them, Sonia whispered to Tanya as they refilled wine in the servants' corridor. About us. Or he is just good at looking sad to maintain sympathy, Tanya replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Playing the tragic king. It is good politics. You do not believe that. Tanya was quiet for a long moment. No. But I want to. It would make this easier. They discovered the memorial chamber during their 4th night at the castle. Late shift cleaning duty took them to the private royal wing, where few servants were permitted. Most of the doors were standard, but one at the corridor's end was different. Sealed, spelled with blood magic that glowed faintly red in the darkness. We should not, Sonia said, even as Tanya was already approaching it. We should. Tanya pulled out a borrowed knife from her pocket, pressed the blade against her palm until blood welled. The lock was old magic, designed to respond only to royal blood. But royal blood did not distinguish between the king and his daughters. The wards flickered, hesitated, then opened. Inside was not a storage room. It was a shrine. 2 small bedrooms, perfectly preserved. The furniture was child-sized, painted in soft colors that seemed alien in a castle of obsidian and blood. Toys lined shelves, wooden horses, stuffed animals, building blocks carved with Slavic letters, books in a dozen languages. Tiny clothes hung in wardrobes that would never hold a growing child's body. Drawings were framed on the walls, crude crayon sketches signed Sonia and Tanya in unsteady 5-year-old handwriting. A cabinet held blood portraits, magical photographs that captured not just image but essence. Sonia opened it with trembling hands and saw herself. Saw both of them. Newborns wrapped in royal christening gowns. Toddlers learning to walk. 4-year-olds in matching dresses. 5-year-olds on the day before they disappeared, laughing at something beyond the frame. He kept everything, Sonia whispered, and her voice broke. For 12 years. Everything. Tanya stood frozen in the center of what had been her childhood bedroom, hands clenched at her sides. Why? Why does he get to mourn us when he is the reason Mom ran? Was he, though? Sonia turned to her sister. She lied about that too. About all of it. Tanya's anger crumbled into something rawer. She picked up a stuffed rabbit from the bed, Sonia's rabbit, the one she had tried to bring the night they fled. He saved it. He saved everything we left behind. They found the letters in a drawer of the desk leather-bound journal filled with entries written in Dimitri's precise script. Not letters to Irina. Letters to them. Sonia read one aloud, her voice barely steady. My Malishki, I dreamed you called for me last night. I woke reaching for you and found only empty air. The court says I should stop coming to your graves, that 12 years is long enough to mourn. But how can I stop when stopping means forgetting? And I will never forget you. Not in 12 years, not in 12 centuries, not ever. The latest entry was dated 5 days ago. I saw 2 girls in the market today, twins, about the age you should be now. I followed them for 3 blocks before I realized what I was doing. I think I am losing my mind, Malishki. Or maybe I lost it 12 years ago and I am only now noticing. He calls us Malishki, Tanya said, voice cracking. Little ones. He still talks to us like we are alive. Footsteps sounded in the corridor outside. Both twins froze, terror spiking through their veins. If they were caught here, they dove behind the armoire, pressing their glamour tight, becoming shadows within shadows. The door opened. Nadia entered, followed by Dimitri. I just need a moment, Dimitri said. His voice sounded different here, stripped of royal command. Just tired, just broken, please. Nadia's expression softened in a way the twins had never seen in court. You come here too often, Dimitri. It has been 12 years. They are not coming back, I know. He moved to Sonia's bed, sat on the edge like he had 1,000 times before. But this is all I have left of them. Let me have this. Nadia left silently. The door closed. And Dimitri broke, not the controlled grief of the cemetery. This was raw, desperate, the sound of something wounded beyond healing. He bent forward, head in hands, and sobbed with the abandon of someone who thought himself alone. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. I should have protected you. Should have known she would break. Should have stopped her before." His voice dissolved into wordless pain. The twins watched through the gap between armoire and wall, neither daring to breathe, both understanding with visceral clarity that this was the truth their mother had denied them. This grief, this love, this complete devastation. When Dmitri finally left, they stayed hidden for 20 minutes, neither speaking. Finally, Sonia said, "We cannot keep hiding. We cannot just walk up and say, 'Surprise, we are alive,' either," Tanya countered. "That might literally kill him. So what do? We figure out how to tell him without destroying him." They were halfway back to their quarters when Tanya collapsed. One knee hit the stone floor, then the other. Tanya's eyes rolled back, showing whites that gleamed in the dim corridor. Sonia caught her before her head struck the ground, but barely her own strength was nearly gone. 12 years of starvation finally demanding its price. Tanya, stay with me." Sonia pressed fingers to her sister's throat, feeling the pulse that was too slow, too weak. A guard rounded the corner, saw them, and his expression shifted from annoyance to alarm. "What happened?" She hasn't been well. Travel sickness." The lie came automatically, but it sounded hollow even to Sonia's ears. The guard knelt beside them, and his nostrils flared as he scented the air. "That's not travel sickness. That's blood starvation." His eyes narrowed. "When did you last feed properly?" Before Sonia could construct another lie, footsteps approached with purpose. Nadia appeared, took one look at Tanya's unconscious form, and her expression hardened into something ancient and dangerous. "Get them to my chambers," she said. Now. In Nadia's private rooms, a space that hummed with old magic and smelled of blood sage, the ancient vampire worked with clinical efficiency. She forced blood wine between Tanya's lips. A concentrated mixture spelled for rapid absorption. Tanya's body responded immediately, convulsing once before her eyes snapped open, gasping. "Drink," Nadia commanded, and Tanya obeyed, instinct overwhelming pride. Color returned to her face in a rush that was almost obscene after years of pallor. When Tanya could sit up on her own, Nadia turned to Sonia. "You too. Don't argue." The blood wine burned going down, rich and potent in ways animal blood had never been. Sonia felt it spreading through her system like fire through kindling, awakening parts of her vampire nature that had been dormant so long she had forgotten they existed. Strength. Speed. The predatory awareness that made her suddenly, viscerally conscious of every heartbeat in the castle. Nadia watched them both with eyes that had witnessed 6 centuries of lies. "You're not just malnourished. You've been starved for years. Over a decade." She touched Tanya's wrist, traced the scars that marked repeated poor feeding. "This is abuse." "We managed," Tanya said defensively, but her voice shook. "You're dying, both of you. Another month and you'd fade into ghouls, mindless, hollow things that used to be vampire." Nadia sat back, studying them with the intensity of someone solving a particularly interesting puzzle. "Where are you really from? Who did this to you? Why?" The twins exchanged glances. Sonia started to deflect, but Nadia raised one hand. "Don't. I'm going to find out who you are. And when I do, we'll have a very different conversation." She stood, moved to the door. "You're being watched now. Closely. Whatever game you're playing, it ends soon. One way or another." 3 days later, they were sent on an errand that should have been routine, delivering sealed correspondence to the border garrison. Standard attendant duty that happened weekly. The market district was crowded with the usual twilight commerce, vampires and blood-sworn humans conducting business in the eternal dusk that defined Crescent Hollow. Tanya noticed them first. "Someone's following us." Sonia resisted the urge to look. "Paranoid much?" "No, seriously. 3 guys. Coordinated movement. Professional." Tanya's hand found Sonia's, squeezed hard. "We need to go. Now." They tried to blend into the crowd, using the press of bodies as cover. But Nightborn agents were trained hunters, and the twins were prey weakened by years of deprivation. The crowd seemed to part at exactly the wrong moments, funneling them toward a narrow alley between 2 bloodhouses establishments where vampires could feed from willing donors in private rooms. 3 vampires blocked the alley's exit. They wore no identifying marks, but their posture spoke of military training and cruel intent. The lead vampire smiled, and it was not pleasant. "Sonia and Tanya Rusavori," he said, voice carrying Old Slavic accent. "Or should we call you the ghosts of Crescent Hollow?" Every drop of blood in Sonia's body turned to ice. Tanya stepped forward, chin raised in defiance. "Wrong, people. We're Volkov clan. You're making a mistake." The vampire laughed. "Blood doesn't lie, little princesses. You can glamour your faces all you want, but your blood sings the royal song. We heard it from across the city the moment you stopped suppressing your nature." He gestured to his companions. "Take them. Grigor wants them alive, but he didn't say unharmed." They grabbed Sonia first. Tanya exploded into motion, 12 years of anger and fear, and suppressed vampire nature unleashed in a single moment. She was fast. Faster than any of them expected. But 12 years of starvation had left her weak where it counted. One vampire caught her wrist, twisted, and his blade opened her forearm to the bone. Tanya's blood hit the cobblestones, and the scent that rose from it was unmistakable. Royal bloodline. Pure. Ancient. The vampire holding her inhaled deeply and grinned. "Oh, Dmitri is going to love this. His dead daughters, alive and playing servant in his own castle." He never finished the sentence. Dmitri appeared like shadow given form and purpose. The Crimson Six materializing around him in synchronized violence. The transformation from grieving king to lethal predator was instantaneous and terrifying. He moved with speed that defied tracking. 3 centuries of combat experience compressed into motion that seemed to bend reality. The first Nightborn vampire died with his throat ripped out before he could scream. The second tried to run and made it 3 steps before Dimitri's guard intercepted him, blade finding heart with surgical precision. The third grabbed Sonia, using her as a shield. "Stay back, or she..." Dimitri's hand was through his chest cavity before the words finished forming, emerging from the vampire's back, clutching a still beating heart. The vampire crumbled to ash, and Sonia stumbled forward into Nadia's steadying grip. "You touched them," Dmitri said, voice cold as grave frost and winter death. "You die." He turned to the twins, and for one heart-stopping moment, their glamour flickered under stress and blood loss. Sonia saw recognition flash across his face, features that were hauntingly, impossibly familiar, before they reinforced the spell, locking back into the false Volkov faces. "Are you hurt?" His voice was different now, careful, too controlled. "We're fine," Sonia managed. "Thank you for..." "Don't." He cut her off sharply. "Don't thank me. This is my failure. My court should be safe. This should never have happened." His eyes dropped to Tanya's blood on the cobblestones, and something in his expression shifted. Ancient instinct, warring with impossible hope and denial. He knelt, touched the blood with one finger, brought it to his lips. The taste hit him like physical force, and his entire body went rigid. "We need to get them to safety," Nadia said urgently, stepping between Dmitri and the twins before he could speak. Now, back at the castle, Dmitri overruled every protocol and centuries of tradition. "They're under my personal protection. Move them to the royal private quarters. Anyone who touches them answers to me directly." The court exploded into speculation. Minor nobility from a borderland clan given chambers near the king? Unprecedented. Scandalous. Politically explosive. Nadia tended their wounds in silence, force-feeding them proper blood-rich, human, donated by willing court members. The twins' vampire nature responded with desperate gratitude, healing, accelerating, color flooding back into skin that had been gray for too long. "Your bodies are starving for this," Nadia said quietly, wrapping Tanya's arm. "Years of deprivation. Who did this to you?" "No one," Tanya said. "We chose to limit our feeding. Vampires don't choose starvation." Nadia's eyes were ancient and knowing. "Someone forced this on you. Someone afraid of what you'd become if you fed properly." The truth hung unspoken between them like blood and water. Later that night, Dmitri came. He had changed from blood-spattered combat clothes to formal evening wear, but his hands still trembled slightly when he thought they weren't watching. "I need to know why the Nightborn wanted you," he said without preamble. "Specifically you." "We don't know," Sonia tried. "Wrong place, wrong time?" Dimitri's eyes ice blue, identical to theirs, studied them with intensity that felt like being flayed open. "No. They called you by name. How did they know your names?" "We're Volkovs," Tanya said. "Everyone knows. They didn't say Volkov." His voice dropped. "They said something else. I couldn't hear clearly. Lie. They all knew it." He had heard perfectly, was giving them one last chance to tell him themselves. The twins stayed silent. "You'll stay here under my protection until I understand what's happening," Dmitri said finally. "That's not optional." As he reached the door, he paused, hand on the frame. Your blood scent. When I smelled it in that alley, it reminded me of something. Someone. Sonia's voice came out barely a whisper. Who? Long pause. When he spoke, his voice carried 12 years of grief, an impossible, desperate hope. My daughters. It reminded me of my daughters. He left before either twin could respond. Alone, they fell apart. Tanya paced like a caged animal. He knows. He doesn't know he knows. But he knows. His blood recognizes ours, Sonia said. Ancient vampire bond, father to daughter. Biology doesn't lie even when we do. So what now? We're trapped here. In his private wing, under his protection. How do we hide now? Maybe we don't. Maybe we tell him. Just like that? Hey Dad, surprise. We're alive and we've been lying to you for 3 weeks? Better than him finding out when Nadia blood tests us. Or when our glamour fails completely. Or when the Nightborn announce it publicly. The door opened without knocking. Nadia stood in the threshold, holding a vial of blood, Tanya's blood from the alley. I blood tested the samples from your wounds. I know who you are. The twins froze. You have until the blood moon ceremony in 2 weeks. Nadia continued, voice hard as iron. Tell him yourselves, or I will. And if I have to do it, the consequences will be far worse than whatever you're afraid of. 2 weeks felt like 2 centuries and 2 heartbeats simultaneously. Dmitri circled them like a predator that couldn't decide whether to attack or protect, bringing them to council meetings where attendance had never been permitted, sharing private dinners in his chambers, asking careful questions about their childhood that the twins answered with increasingly desperate lies. Each interaction pulled the glamour thinner, stretched the deception to breaking. I know it's impossible, Dmitri said to Nadia one evening, unaware the twins were passing in the corridor outside his study. I watched them burn, held the ashes, buried empty urns, but when I'm near those girls, it's like breathing for the first time in 12 years. Maybe it's not impossible, Nadia replied gently. Maybe you should trust what your blood is telling you. The bond grew despite the lies. Small moments accumulated like snow before an avalanche. Dmitri teaching them court protocol they should have learned as children. His patience infinite when they fumbled formal greetings or forgot which bow corresponded to which rank. Sharing blood wine at dinner. An intimate act in vampire culture reserved for family. Him referencing things his daughters used to do. Sonia always hummed when she concentrated, and Tanya would tap her left foot when she was anxious, and the twins unconsciously responding. Yes, we remember, before catching themselves mid-sentence, horror dawning at the slip. Sonia broke first during a discussion about childhood lullabies. The conversation had wandered naturally, other attendants sharing songs their parents had sung. Without thinking, Sonia began humming a melody that had lived in her bones since before memory soft. Old Slavic, achingly familiar. Dmitri went absolutely still. The room fell silent. How do you know that song? Sonia's blood turned to ice. It's a common Slavic lullaby. Everyone knows it. No. His voice dropped dangerously quiet. It's not common. I wrote it. For my daughters. Only they ever knew it. I sang it to them every night until he stopped, couldn't finish. His eyes locked on Sonia's face with terrible intensity. How do you know it? Tanya jumped in before Sonia could spiral. We must have heard it somewhere. From travelers, maybe. Songs get passed around. But the lie was tissue thin, and Dmitri knew it. He said nothing more that night, but his gaze followed them with new weight, new questions, new desperate hope, fighting against impossible odds. With proper feeding, the twins transformed in ways that made hiding exponentially harder. Strength returned. Speed. The predatory grace that marked pure-blooded vampire nobility. Their true features kept bleeding through the glamour like watercolors in rain. Court members began noticing, making comparisons to the portraits that hung throughout the castle. Young Sonia and Tanya frozen forever at age 5. Platinum hair and ice-blue eyes staring from blood-painted canvas. Have the Volkov girls always looked so much like No? That's impossible, one courtier whispered. Not quietly enough. Dmitri and Nadia's relationship shifted in those 2 weeks. He opened to her in ways he hadn't in decades, and she loved him with patience that came from 6 centuries of understanding that some wounds needed time to close. One night after a brutal council session where the Nightborn clan pushed borders yet again, Dmitri found her in the library. I'm starting to hope again, he admitted, standing beside her at the window overlooking the eternal twilight. I thought that part of me died with them, But these girls, I feel alive around them. Then trust that feeling, Nadia said. Even if it leads somewhere you think is impossible. He kissed her. First real intimacy in 12 years, tentative, and almost frightened. But Nadia pulled back before it could deepen. I can't do this until you know the whole truth, she said. About them. About what's been hidden from you. What are you talking about? Ask them who they really are. At the blood moon. Blood cannot lie under the moon's witness. The blood moon ceremony arrived with the weight of destiny. Ancient vampire ritual held every 12 years to verify bloodlines and reaffirm oaths. The timing was significant, exactly 12 years since the massacre that wasn't. All royal blood must present themselves or forfeit protection and name, and the ceremony used magic so old and powerful that no glamour could survive it. When Dmitri performs the blood recognition ritual, Nadia explained privately the day before, every vampire carrying his blood will be revealed. Your glamour will burn away like paper in sunlight. Then we tell him tonight, Sonia said, before the ceremony. He deserves to hear it from us. They went to his study that night, hearts hammering with determination and terror in equal measure, but they stopped outside when they heard his voice through the door, speaking to someone who couldn't answer back. Tomorrow is the blood moon, 12 years exactly. He was talking to the portrait again. I keep thinking you'll walk through that door, that this nightmare will end. But you won't. You're gone. And I need to accept that. His voice cracked. These girls, Svetlana and Tatiana, they've helped. Made me feel less alone. But they're not you. No one will ever be you. The finality in those words destroyed Sonia. Tanya grabbed her hand, pulled her away from the door before their presence could be detected. We can't tell him, Tanya whispered. Not tonight. It would destroy him right before he has to rule in front of the entire court. Then tomorrow, Sonia said. At the ceremony, we let the blood show him. That's cruel. Less cruel than telling him tonight and leaving him alone with it. At least tomorrow we'll be there. Public forces him to hold together until we can talk privately. The Great Hall was packed with every vampire of significance in the Eastern Territories. The enchanted ceiling showed the blood moon rising full, crimson, radiating ancient power that made every vampire present feel the pull of their nature. Dmitri presided in full regalia, black and silver, crown of obsidian that had crowned Rusevori kings for millennia. He was magnificent and terrifying and utterly untouchable. The ritual began. Minor royalty approached first distant cousins, branch families, all confirmed through blood magic that glowed and verified their claims. Then Nadia's voice rang through the hall, formal and inexorable. All those carrying the direct blood of Dmitri Alexeyevich Rusevori approach for recognition. Silence crashed down. Everyone knew his direct bloodline had died 12 years ago. The twins stood in the attendance section at the hall's edge, and they felt it, the blood moon's power pulling at their vampire nature, demanding truth, rejecting deception. By law and ancient tradition, Nadia continued, louder, all direct blood must present. Failure to do so is forfeit of protection and name. Their glamour began to crack. Not slowly. All at once, like ice shattering under pressure. Sparkles of failing magic shimmered around them. Whispers rippled through the crowd. What's happening to the Volkov girls? They had no choice. The moon was forcing them forward, and fighting would only make the revelation more violent. Sonia took Tanya's hand left and right, as always, and they stepped out of the attendance section. Every eye in the hall turned to watch them walk toward the throne. With each step, more glamour fell away. Their hair lightened from dark brown to platinum blonde. Their eyes shifted from concealed gray to ice blue. Their features refined into exact mirrors of the portraits that hung on every wall. By the time they reached the base of the dais, the transformation was complete. The court erupted. Not sound vampires were too controlled for that, but collective shock that rippled through the hall like earthquake tremors. It's them. The princesses. Impossible. Dmitri rose from the throne like a man in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. All color had drained from his face. He descended the steps slowly, each movement careful, as if one wrong step would shatter reality completely. The twins knelt in formal supplication, heads bowed. Who are you? His voice was strangled, barely recognizable. They looked up, meeting his eyes, their eyes, ice blue and identical for the first time without barriers. We are Sonia Dmitrievna Rusevori and Tanya Dmitrievna Rusevori, they said in unison, voices clear and unwavering. Your daughters. We never burned. We never died. We are here. Dmitri pulled out the ceremonial blade with hands that shook, silver, ancient, spelled with magic older than recorded history. He cut his palm, then reached for theirs. Each cut deliberate, careful, as if he was afraid they would disappear if he moved too quickly. He pressed their hands together, his blood mingling with theirs. 3 palms joined in, the oldest magic vampires possessed. Light burst from their joined hands, blood red and blinding. The ancient spell activated, voice resonating through the hall with power that made the walls tremble. Blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh, kin of my kin confirmed. The word echoed, magical, binding, undeniable truth. Dimitri's knees buckled. His guard caught him before he hit the ground, but barely. The twins reached for him instinctively. Father, he pulled back like they had burned him. Don't call me that. Not yet. Not until I understand. He stood with visible effort, addressed the hall in a voice that carried 3 centuries of command, despite the tremor underneath. Everyone out. Now. This ceremony is concluded. The court evacuated in stunned silence. Only Nadia remained, standing at the hall's far end, giving them space but staying close enough to intervene if needed. Dimitri looked at his daughters, truly saw them for the first time in 12 years, and the word came out broken. How?